Before we begin, I want to offer a brief disclaimer. I'm new to this YouTube journey, and I didn't set out to make political commentary, at least not directly. My original intent was to explore how language, symbolism, and rhetorical deception shape the way we think, how they influence our beliefs about reality, identity, and power. It's my passion to expose how media, politicians, pundits, and influencers use these tools, not just to persuade, but to condition us, to keep us aligned with conventional frameworks, to keep us compliant. But then, I had an epiphany. The theory I'm about to share didn't feel optional. It felt urgent, and I realized I couldn't postpone politics for later. Because what's happening right now isn't just political. It's foundational to everything I want this channel to explore. So yes, I'm politically conscious, I'm informed, and I have my own biases. But my goal here is not to preach, it's to reveal, to show you how rhetorical strategies are being weaponized, and to invite you into a deeper conversation about power, perception, and the stories we're told. Let's begin. You've probably seen the clips. Commentator Charlie Kirk gets turned away from a restaurant in Phoenix, and the conservative media ecosystem explodes. Headlines declare it a scandalous violation of his rights. But then, the comparison begins. Some on the right begin to frame this moment as equivalent to the struggles of Martin Luther King Jr. This wasn't just hyperbole. It was a single calculated move, straight out of the Authoritarian Playbook. Welcome, everyone. Today we're connecting the dots. What we're witnessing is not just a domestic political tactic. It's the implementation of a documented step-by-step process used by authoritarians to gain power. A segment of the dominant culture is rebranding itself as a victim class, appropriating the language of the civil rights movement to position themselves as underdogs. This is a power move to dismantle institutions, justify rolling back rights, and re-establish a traditional social hierarchy. The Charlie Kirk incident isn't just an example, it's a signal of the playbook's advanced stages. But to understand this, we have to rewind. For most of American history, the default setting for social, political, and economic power was exclusively white, male, and Christian. It was an uncontested hierarchy, the relative success of the civil rights movement, followed by feminism, LGBTQ+ rights, and other justice movements. Successfully challenged that hierarchy, women entered the workforce en masse, discrimination became illegal on paper, and marriage equality became the law of the land. And here is the critical catalyst. For a segment of that formerly dominant group, this progress didn't feel like expansion. It felt like a loss. As sociologist Michael Kimmel has argued, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. This perceived loss, this demotion from being the unquestioned default, is the fertile soil in which the rhetoric of reverse discrimination took root. The anxiety of losing an earned privilege is the fuel for the entire victimhood narrative. And from that soil, a victim narrative grows. This narrative is a powerful tool because it confers three major advantages. First, it grants the moral high ground. The victim is inherently sympathetic. Their actions can be framed not as aggression, but as self-defense. Second, it silences criticism. Any critique can be dismissed as bullying, or worse, persecution. Third, it justifies extreme measures. If your group is under existential threat, then authoritarian responses become not just acceptable, but necessary. This is the psychological engine. It transforms the anxiety of losing privilege into the righteous anger of a persecuted identity. But they needed a story to sell this victimhood. That story is the great replacement theory. And it didn't jump from fringe websites to the mainstream overnight. It was a gradual escalation, aided by complicit media. The theory started in the darkest corners of the internet and white nationalist circles. It's the racist conspiracy that a sinister elite is deliberately orchestrating demographic change to replace white populations. But then, it got a prime-time makeover. According to a New York Times analysis, Tucker Carlson alone discussed some version of this theory on his Fox News show over 400 times. He didn't use the Klan's hooded language. He used polished, fear-inducing questions for his millions of viewers. Why does the Democratic Party support immigration? He asked. It's to replace the current electorate. This wasn't an accident, it was a strategy. By repeating it, sanitizing it, and framing it as a legitimate political debate, Carlson and other influential figures acted as a bridge, transporting a violent conspiracy theory into the living rooms of mainstream conservatives. The media's complicity was the catalyst. They turned a paranoid fantasy into a perceived reality for a huge portion of the electorate. And this narrative isn't just spreading through media, it's being funded. A network of well-funded conservative think tanks and legal groups has been producing the intellectual framework for this victimhood narrative for decades. They fund studies, draft model legislation to ban DEI and CRT, and provide the talking points for those media figures. Furthermore, the infrastructure of social media algorithms financially incentivizes outrage. Content that stokes racial anxiety and claims persecution generates immense engagement, clicks, shares, and watch time, which translates directly into ad revenue. This creates a perverse economic engine, one that rewards the very manufacturing of victimhood we're discussing. This brings us back to Charlie Kirk. A private business deciding not to serve a controversial figure is a far cry from the state-sanctioned, violent oppression faced by Martin Luther King Jr. So how do you bridge that unimaginable gap? You do it by appropriating the iconography of the civil rights movement itself. This is the final audacious step in the strategy, the manufacturing of a martyr. By explicitly comparing Kirk's experience to King's, the movement seeks to transfer the immense moral authority of the civil rights struggle onto their own political project. Kirk being turned away from a restaurant is framed as his Selma. Seriously. This serves two crucial purposes. First, it legitimizes their entire victimhood narrative. If they are the new Martin Luther King, then their cause must be just. Second, it delegitimizes the actual fight for civil rights. It creates a false moral equivalence, suggesting that fighting for inclusion is the same as fighting to exclude. It's the ultimate act of rhetorical theft. But to truly understand the end goal, we must recognize that these steps are not original. They are straight out of the Authoritarian Playbook, a pattern observed by historians like Ruth Ben-Ghiat and Timothy Snyder. Step 1. Create a mythic past. Authoritarian movements always harken back to a lost, idealized, and often fictional golden age. Make America Great Again is a textbook example. Step 2. Identify a corrupting enemy. You need a group to blame for the loss of that golden age. Replacement theory provides this perfectly. The elite and the immigrant become the corrupting forces poisoning the nation. Step 3. Claim victimhood. As we've discussed, the powerful must posture as the persecuted. This justifies the final step. Step 4. Promise law and order. This is the crucial pivot. The strong man promises to use the power of the state to crush the enemies he has identified, to restore the mythic past, and to protect the true people. This promise of law and order is never about justice. It is always about using the law as a weapon against designated opponents and to enforce hierarchy. What we are witnessing is the American implementation of this exact blueprint. The attacks on DEI, the dismantling of civil rights protections outlined in Project 2025, the voter suppression laws. These are not disparate policies. They are step 4. They are the promised law and order, delivered. So when you see Charlie Kirk being compared to Martin Luther King Jr., don't just laugh it off. See it for what it is, a signal flare. It is the culmination of a documented authoritarian strategy, fueled by a perceived loss of privilege, and mainstreamed by complicit media. They are not just playing politics. They are executing a playbook that has doomed other democracies. Recognizing the pattern is our first and most crucial step toward breaking it. What do you think? Let's have a respectful conversation in the comments below.